For millennia, the Zalari had ruled the galaxy like gods. Towering figures of shimmering light and shifting armor, they descended from the stars in golden ships the size of cities, their voices carried by storms and their commands enforced by beams of destruction. Worlds knelt, not because they believed in the Zalari's divinity, but because resistance always ended in fire and silence. Entire civilizations had vanished under the pretense of blasphemy. Their cities turned to glass, their histories erased from stardust. No species had dared to stand against the self-proclaimed gods. That is, until the humans arrived. The Zalari first became aware of humanity when a signal crossed one of their ancient watchposts, a human exploration vessel named Valiant, moving confidently through the Klysar expanse, a region deemed sacred and forbidden. Such an act would have meant swift destruction for any other species. But the Zalari were curious. This new race had technology barely a few centuries old, yet they crossed into sacred territory as if borders meant nothing, as if they had never heard of fear. A council was called on the Zalari capital world, Zetherian. Prime, images of humans, fragile beings with soft bodies and determined eyes, were projected in the air before the Elders of Light. The humans spoke boldly. Captain Amina Khan stood at the center of the hologram, staring into the lens with calm defiance. "We are not here to kneel," she had said. "We are here to learn, to explore. If you believe yourselves gods, prove it, not with fear, but with wisdom." Such words caused silence across the chamber, then quiet laughter. The elders decided to respond not with death, but with spectacle. Let these humans see what true power looked like. Let them watch a moon shatter. A Zalari vessel, the Eye of Judgment, descended into orbit around Vortan 9, a barren moon known only for its ancient craters. In a show of force, the ship's main cannon fired a single pulse. The moon cracked, like porcelain, then split apart into fire and stone, scattering dust across the stars. The message was clear. This was the fate of those who defied divinity. But the humans did not tremble. The Valiant remained in position, shields raised, but weapons silent. Moments later, a second human vessel appeared beside it. Then another. Dozens of small ships, nothing compared to the might of the Zalari fleet. But there was something different about them. They moved with purpose. They stayed as one. For the first time in countless generations, the Zalari saw not fear, but a challenge. Humanity's history was not filled with submission, but with survival. They had risen from a world of storms and beasts, of war and ruin, only to build again and again. When oceans swallowed their cities, they built floating nations. When the skies filled with fire, they rebuilt beneath the ground. They had split atoms, touched the stars, and left behind the gravity of their homeworld, not because they were commanded to, but because they chose to. The Zalari tried to speak through their translators, expecting the humans to finally kneel, to beg for mercy or favor, but the humans sent no prayers. Instead, they sent data packets, open transmissions of peace, warning, and a single line that echoed across the stars. "We acknowledge your strength, but strength does not make gods." It was not war, not yet, but something had changed in that moment. The galaxy held its breath. From the shadows of oppressed worlds, alien eyes watched the standoff with curiosity and hidden hope. If the humans refused to worship, refused to be broken by displays of power, then maybe the age of the gods was ending. The Zalari could have crushed them then, but they didn't. Pride, curiosity, and perhaps fear of the unknown held their hand. The Valiant turned away from Vortan 9, slowly retreating into unclaimed space. It was not surrender, it was strategy. The humans were not finished, far from it. News of the confrontation between humanity and the Zalari spread across the galaxy like solar fire through dry grass. Species that had long since buried their hopes under the weight of tyranny paused to listen. The images of humans standing firm against the so-called gods echoed in forbidden transmissions, whispered in alien marketplaces, and painted onto walls in colors of rebellion. On Earth, the moment marked the beginning of something greater than exploration. It marked the start of resistance. Earth's governments, once divided by centuries of competition and mistrust, convened in emergency unity. Old grudges were set aside in favor of survival. The leaders of once feuding nations shook hands across oceans and digital screens, their eyes filled with purpose. The Terran Accord was signed within weeks, forming the first united planetary front. What began as a spacefaring experiment now became a global mission, to prepare, to defend, and to push back. On the orbital stations circling Earth, engineers worked around the clock, modifying warships that were once designed for local defense into vessels that could stand against alien fleets. Scientists, with eyes heavy from sleepless nights, unlocked dormant blueprints, experimental weapons once deemed too dangerous, propulsion systems too unstable, energy cores too ambitious. Every nation contributed: titanium from the asteroids, AI research from Europa's colonies, quantum shielding tech from Martian laboratories. Factories that once made consumer goods now forged hull plates and plasma barrels. Recruits flooded into training programs, from old veterans to young dreamers, all ready to serve under one banner: the survival of humankind. Deep in the icy rings of Saturn, a breakthrough was born: the fusion-lensed plasma cannon, the first weapon capable of piercing Zalari armor. It was tested in secret, buried beneath the clouds of a gas giant, hidden from prying eyes. And when it roared, it left behind nothing but vapor. The weapon was installed on the newly christened EHS Titan, a warship unlike any humanity had ever built. It was swift, deadly, and cloaked with experimental stealth fields that bent light and silence. The ship's mission would mark the first offensive operation against the gods. Vega Prime, a mining colony enslaved for centuries under Zalari rule, had sent a faint distress signal. Most of its people had forgotten what freedom felt like. The Zalari had built temples and garrisons across the surface, claiming its rare crystals as divine tribute. When the Titan arrived, it did not ask permission. It slipped through orbit undetected and launched a precise strike. The plasma cannon ignited, and a Zalari dreadnought, the Hand of Purity, was vaporized before it could raise its shields. The explosion lit the dark side of Vega Prime like a second sun. The remaining Zalari forces scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Dropships deployed from the Titan, delivering ground teams of human soldiers clad in exo-armor, fast and coordinated. Their movements were unlike anything the Zalari had ever encountered, predictable by logic, yet chaotic with human instinct. For the first time in generations, a Zalari command node fell, not to natural disaster or internal failure, but to an enemy's hand. The people of Vega Prime watched as the temple collapsed, its towering spires reduced to rubble. Some wept, others screamed. All realized in that moment that the gods could bleed. The Titan did not stay. It vanished as quickly as it had come, disappearing into the folds of space, leaving behind a message: the age of fear is ending. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds began to stir. Messages were sent in secret, hidden in trade code and music signals. Quiet revolts ignited in places the Zalari thought secure. The humans had not just fired a weapon, they had lit a torch. Embers of rebellion danced in the darkness, each one born from the same spark: hope. The Zalari, once calm and cruel in their rule, now convened more often. Their voices, always composed, grew tense. They had never imagined that a species so young, so raw, could pose a threat. Yet something ancient stirred behind human eyes. Not malice, not greed, but the will to be free. And for the first time, the gods began to wonder if they were still in control. In the cold void near the edge of the Haran Belt, the Zalari prepared their answer. Pride wounded and power questioned, the ancient race no longer played games of intimidation. They prepared for war. From the twin stars of Kol Senar rose fleets, of obsidian warships, forged in silence, shaped by rituals, and powered by cores older than many suns. At their center flew the Wrath of Eternity, a dreadnought so massive it bent gravity with its passage, a vessel believed to carry a fragment of a dead star within its heart. The Zalari called upon every vassal world, every sworn warrior priest, and every ancient weapon thought buried in time. If a single race dared to challenge divine right, then that race would be made an example so final that even ghosts would tremble. The fleet moved through space like a storm, a firestorm of retribution. Meanwhile, Earth stood braced and ready. Sensors at the edge of human-controlled space lit up one by one, alarms echoing across space stations and outposts. There was no illusion anymore. This was not a warning. It was a judgment. Earth's High Command convened aboard the Fortress Skyhold, a mobile command station orbiting Neptune, deep within a nebula's protective cloud. The faces around the table were worn, but not afraid. Strategies unfolded. Calculations ran. Fleet trajectories plotted. This was not a battle to win through numbers or brute force. The humans were outnumbered 10-1. But humanity had never survived through numbers. It survived through will, through unpredictability, through defiance forged in fire. Operation Iron Pulse was activated. The outer colonies were evacuated under the cover of decoy fleets. Zalari scouts found ghost stations, empty mining rigs left to detonate on proximity. Every light year deeper they traveled, the more they felt the silent pull of a trap. And then, as the wrath of eternity neared the orbit of Elion 3, the trap snapped shut. From asteroid fields cloaked in electromagnetic shadows, human warships emerged, not in fleets, but in swarms. Small, fast, and driven by AIs tuned for split-second aggression, they dove toward the larger enemy vessels with surgical strikes. They did not try to match power. They shattered joints, cut engine lines, and planted remote warheads onto unguarded hulls. The Titan, now refitted with twin plasma lenses and a prototype gravitic disruptor, re-entered the field like a ghost from Vega Prime's memory. Its cannon fired, and a Zalari cruiser detonated mid-chant, its destruction visible from the planet's surface like a falling star. Chaos erupted. The Zalari had expected fear. What they received was fury. What had once been sacred strategy faltered under the sheer audacity of human improvisation. Commands broke down, ranks dissolved. Zalari galleons collided with one another, in panic, attempting to retreat or realign. But it was too late. The battle was not won in overwhelming force. It was won in misdirection, in feints, in the use of old tactics seen through new eyes. As the wrath of eternity turned to retaliate, something unexpected occurred. From the dark side of Elion 3, a hidden station activated. Project Odin, a human experiment buried for years, came online. Its pulse cannon, powered by a chained singularity, fired its first and final shot. The beam did not explode. It unraveled. Space folded around the blast, and the wrath of eternity seemed to stretch, flicker, and vanish into an impossible collapse. Where it had stood, there was only silence. For a heartbeat, both fleets paused. Then the Zalari faltered. Their dreadnought, their godship, was gone. The symbols of their divine rule cracked with it. One by one, their vessels turned away, not in retreat, but in disbelief. For the first time in over 10,000 years, the Zalari fled. Across the galaxy, rebel signals lit up, long dormant beacons activated, and free voices rose from the ashes of broken chains. The myth of the gods shattered in a single stroke, not by accident, but by intention. Humanity had not only defended itself, it had ended something ancient. The battlefield quieted. Wreckage drifted like steel snow through the stars. Among it, human rescue ships moved, recovering both allies and enemies, offering aid where once there had only been struggle. The message sent from Earth to all known systems was brief but unforgettable. We are not gods, and neither are they. In the wake of the Zalari retreat, a strange silence spread across the galaxy, one not born from fear, but from awe. For the first time in known history, the stars belonged to no one and everyone all at once. The chains once forged in the fires of ancient tyranny lay broken, drifting as debris across the systems that had suffered under the illusion of divinity. On Earth, there was no celebration of conquest, no triumphal parade. The victory had been hard, the losses immense, and the lesson clear. Power must never again be mistaken for righteousness. Across the former dominion of the Zalari, long slumbering civilizations awakened. Forgotten species emerged from beneath ruined temples and shattered moons, blinking against the brightness of sudden freedom. Some walked upright with scales like crystal, others floated with translucent skin and luminous thoughts. But all looked to the same point in the sky, where Earth's signal now pulsed not with dominance, but with unity. From the old rebel colonies came ambassadors and ships cobbled together from junk and dreams. The Tharuk, once slave laborers beneath volcanic mines, arrived wearing armor forged from repurposed shackles. The Zalari nomads, whose voices could harmonize with the magnetic fields of stars, sang the first notes of peace in centuries. All of them gathered around a new idea, a council not built upon fear, but understanding. And at the center of it stood humans, not as rulers, not as gods, but as reminders of what defiance, courage, and cooperation could achieve. The Galactic Accord was drafted on the orbiting city station Horizon's Rise, suspended between the twin moons of Kalis 9. No longer would empires claim divine right to rule. No longer would strength alone dictate law. Every species, no matter how small or strange, was granted voice and vote. Even some Zalari factions, shattered by the fall of their sacred fleet and awakened from blind obedience, came forward. Among them stood Commander Arlex, who had once led the siege of Duranus 6 and now knelt before the new order, not in shame, but in a solemn vow never to let such cruelty rise again. From shattered war machines rose rebuilding teams. Human engineers taught plasma conversion methods to tribes who once used fire as their highest tool. In return, ancient species offered cures for Earth diseases once thought incurable, and shared energy harmonics that extended human lifespans by decades. Joint exploration vessels ventured beyond known space, combining minds from every culture. No longer did ships fly under a single flag. They flew under stars woven together by choice. Yet not all wounds healed at once. On distant planets, remnants of the old ways whispered in shadows, clinging to broken altars and forgotten codes. The memory of oppression ran deep, and freedom, though bright, carried the weight of unknown roads ahead. But even in these corners, sparks of hope flickered. Children born beneath slave banners now traced their names in star maps, no longer praying for mercy, but planning for journeys. In classrooms orbiting Saturn and beneath the water cities of Catharn, young minds studied not the dogma of the Yao gods but the history of the fall. And always, at the end of every lesson, a phrase was repeated. No being is born divine, only choices make legends. The humans who had once looked to the stars with wonder now looked with purpose. Their ships carried diplomats instead of bombs, healers instead of soldiers. Still armed, still wary, but guided by a promise made after the fires of war cooled, to never allow any one race to rise as gods again. On a distant mountaintop on the planet Oryx, beneath skies that shimmered with 3 suns, a monument was carved from meteor stone. It bore no statue, no face, only a single message etched in every known language. When they claimed to be gods, we did not kneel. We lit a fire instead. Beneath that message, children from a dozen worlds played together, unaware of the ancient terror that once ruled the stars. And overhead, space remained vast, full of secrets, dangers, and wonders yet to be found. But this time, the journey would not belong to one world alone. The stars had new voices now. And among them, the quiet echo of humanity's resolve remained. Not gods, not rulers, just travelers with fire in their hearts, and the will to never look away.